Today we look at the magic career of Nick Anderson. Nick Anderson was Orlando's first ever draft pick, selected with the 11th pick in the 1989 NBA draft. Anderson was named Illinois' Mr. Basketball in 1986 as a high schooler, before playing 2 years at the University of Illinois and then being drafted by the Magic. Anderson began his Magic career as a rookie playing as a reserve behind established veteran Reggie Theus. He was one of few young players during the first season for the Magic and the most productive scorer off the bench, helping the team to a victory in their very first game against Miami with 24 points in only 19 minutes of play. As the season progressed, Anderson's minutes began to increase, before in March, Theus was shifted to the point guard spot and Anderson given a chance to start at the 2. Anderson played well as a starter, averaging 17 points in 9 opportunities, but the team lost 8 of those 9 games and Anderson returned to the bench in April. Nick Anderson averaged 11.5 points per game in his rookie season and was thought to have a promising future with the Magic. With Theus traded at the end of the season, Anderson began his sophomore year as the Magic's starting shooting guard. The Magic struggled to start the season, and though Anderson showed good offensive ability, averaging over 16 points per game in the first month of the season, he had lapses on defense which eventually led to him being benched in favor of Otis Smith at the end of November. Anderson wasn't happy about the move, nor about his playing time being cut as a reserve, complaining that it's tough to contribute in only 10 or 15 minutes per game. After 5 straight losses, Anderson was put back into the starting lineup in mid-December, and he helped the team break an 8-game losing streak on Boxing Day against Houston with a career-high 31 points. Anderson held the spot until February, until he injured his thumb against Boston. The Magic won the next 4 straight and 8 of their next 11, with Anderson coming off the bench in some games and missing others with chickenpox. It wasn't until mid-March, when Smith sprained his wrist, that Anderson was put back into the starting lineup, and in 8 starts the Magic won 5 and he scored in double figures 7 times, before a hamstring injury held Anderson out of all but the final 2 games of the season, and Anderson finished with solid averages of 14.1 points and 5.5 rebounds per game. Anderson went into his 3rd season with the Magic, having locked down the starting shooting guard spot, and he was ready to take the leap and try to build on the team's success the previous season. Anderson scored over 20 points in 4 of the first 6 games of the season and scored in double figures in 12 straight, before bruising both elbows in a first quarter fall against Cleveland, which broke the streak. In an early season game against Washington, Anderson came close to a unique triple-double with 24 points, 11 rebounds, and a franchise record 8 steals. Anderson was playing well, but the team began to struggle, not winning a single game in the month of December, despite Anderson putting up back-to-back 30-point games at one point during the stretch. It wasn't until January 8th that the Magic would finally win again, helped by 22 points and 6 rebounds from Anderson. Later in the month, Anderson did record his first triple-double with 32 points, 12 rebounds and 10 assists in a win against Dallas, but another losing stretch soon after saw the season pretty much over from a team competition standpoint. The Magic limped into the All-Star break with a 12-36 record. Orlando was hosting the All-Star game in 1992, and Anderson took part in the NBA Slam Dunk Contest. He made it through into the semi-finals with a pair of solid opening round dunks, but a final dunk where an apparent attempt at a blind dunk went awry spelled the end of his competition. To add injury to insult, a few days after the All-Star break, Anderson got into a fight at a rap concert and had his orbital bone fractured. Initially reported to miss 3 weeks, with the team in a tailspin, there was little incentive to rush Anderson back, and it wasn't until the end of March when he returned off the bench against Miami. Anderson played out the final 11 games of the season, helping the Magic win 4 of them as he averaged over 20 points and 6 rebounds per game in April. Though Anderson had begun to add the 3-point shot to his game the previous season, the 1992-93 season saw the development of his game to add a solid perimeter shot, just in time for the arrival of Shaquille O'Neal to help collapse the defense into the inside. Anderson kicked off his 4th season in style, unloading a career-high 42 points on opening night, landing 3 3-pointers and grabbing 5 steals as the Magic beat Miami in Shaq's first NBA game. The Magic started the season 8-3 in November, with Anderson playing strongly, scoring over 23 points a game, before the team's honeymoon period ended, losing 6 straight. Anderson's play was consistent and the team was in the playoff hunt. In February, he was named the NBA's Player of the Week during a stretch of 5 games where he scored over 20 points. He entered the All-Star break averaging close to 20 points and over 6 rebounds a game. In the race for the playoffs, Anderson increased his three-point percentage to 39% and a free-throw percentage to 80% as he averaged over 20 points a game, with the Magic battling for a postseason spot. Anderson was battling injury and illness as well, with the flu keeping him out of parts of games and having him gasping for breath when he was on the court. He added a strained hamstring, which caused him to miss games down the stretch, as well as a bruised nose after copping an errant elbow to the face. With all these issues in mind, in the penultimate game of the season and the Magic's playoffs hopes dangling by a thread, Anderson sat out the first quarter of a game against New Jersey. Entering the game in the second period, Anderson scored 20 points, and then he added 30 more in the second half to score a franchise record of 50, including a short jump shot with 30 seconds left that gave the Magic the lead in a come-from-behind victory. Anderson added 27 more points the following night in another victory to help the team finish with a 41-41 record, but alas, the team missed the playoffs on a tiebreaker. The silver lining to the playoffs miss was of course the Magic winning the draft lottery for the second consecutive year and taking Anthony Hardaway. For the first half of the season, Hardaway started at shooting guard as Scott Skiles held down the point guard spot. This meant shifting Anderson to small forward, with Dennis Scott coming off the bench. Anderson had to adjust to the change of position, but also a reduced offensive role. With Penny being integrated into the offense, Anderson averaged 4 field goal attempts per game less than the previous season. His three-point shooting, though, continued to evolve and improve as his attempts increased to almost 4 per game. Anderson also put more effort into the defensive effort at the end of the floor, averaging a career-high 1.7 steals per game. Anderson had stated he felt out of sync at small forward, often giving up inches to bigger opponents, but for the first time in Anderson's career, the Magic had a winning record. While Anderson at times was frustrated, this made the adjustments easier to swallow. In early February, coach Brian Hill finally made a lineup change with a look to the future as he moved Scott Skiles to the bench, Hardaway to point guard, Anderson to shooting guard, and Dennis Scott started at small forward. In the first game with this lineup, the Magic were blown out by the Knicks, but then they won 7 straight and the rotation was set. Anderson took longest to readjust, as his shot attempts plummeted in March and he only scored 11.7 points per game. Anderson eventually adjusted to the Magic becoming O'Neal and Hardaway's team, and in the playoff push in April, he broke out of the slump to average 19.8 points per game. The 50-win Magic headed to the playoffs for the first time against the more experienced Indiana Pacers, but they were swept in 3 games. In the first 2 games, the Magic lost by a total of just 3 points, with Anderson scoring 22 points in Game 2. Game 3 was a rough outing for Anderson and the Magic, as he only scored 8 points in the season-ending defeat. With All-Star power forward Horace Grant signing with the Magic after the playoff loss, their lineup was set, and the team started the 94-95 season winning 15 of the first 18 games. Anderson scored in double figures in all but one of those games as he averaged 20 points a game in November. In December, Anderson's minutes and shots dropped off a little, but he scored more efficiently, and by the end of 1994, the Magic had a 23-6 record. A wrist injury against the Hornets temporarily halted Anderson's momentum as he missed a game and his percentages dropped when he returned to the lineup. Thought to be a sprained wrist, a chipped bone was found, and after playing through it in January, Anderson re-aggravated the injury in early February as the Sonics broke the Magic's 24-game home winning streak. Despite the injury, Anderson was having his best season from the three-point line as he entered the All-Star break having made 111 three-pointers for the season. That was already more than Anderson had made in any previous season, and he was invited to participate in the three-point shootout at the All-Star weekend. Anderson got off to a strong start in the contest, but tired in his last 2 racks and finished the competition in 6th place overall. The wrist injury was still an issue for Anderson, who re-aggravated it again in March against the Rockets, but he shot over 46% from downtown during the month. In an April game against the Pistons, Anderson was knocked unconscious, and he spent the night in hospital. The subsequent concussion forced Anderson to miss the next 4 games before coming back against Miami and putting up 20 points in his return. The Magic rolled into the playoffs with a franchise-best 57-25 record, and they faced the Boston Celtics in the first round. In Game 1, the Magic got their first playoff victory, blowing out Boston by 47 points as Anderson scored 20. But Boston turned the tables in Game 2 with a surprising road victory in Orlando, with Anderson scoring just 8. The Magic won the next 2 games to close down the Boston Garden and move on to a much-anticipated battle with the returning Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls in the second round. As the clock wound down on Game 1, the Bulls held on to a 1-point lead and were expecting the Magic to foul. Instead, Anderson came from Jordan's blind side and poked the ball loose, leading to a go-ahead basket and the Magic victory. Had it not been for what occurred later in the playoffs, this play may have been the one that Magic fans remembered Anderson for. Unfortunately, that was not to be. After the loss, Jordan dumped his number 45 jersey and switched back to his retired number 23 jersey for Game 2. Anderson struggled to slow down Jordan, who went off for 38 points to level the series. Anderson scored 22 points in the Game 3 victory, and the Magic went on to win the series in 6 games, moving on to face the Indiana Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals. Anderson was steady and consistent in the Eastern Conference Finals, scoring in double figures in all 7 games, shooting over 50% from the field and 40% on three-pointers as the Magic took the series in 7 games. The Magic moved on to the NBA Finals against the Houston Rockets, and with it, the home court advantage. Game 1 was in Orlando, and lost in the annals of history is how strong a performance Anderson had in Game 1. He scored 22 points, had 11 rebounds, 5 assists and 3 steals as the Magic led for most of the game. But as the game wound down, what unfolded would unfortunately be what many fans think of first when the name Nick Anderson is mentioned. With the Magic leading by 3 points in the closing seconds of regulation, Nick Anderson was fouled and sent to the free throw line. He missed both free throws, but he fought for the offensive rebound and was fouled again. 2 more free throws followed, and Anderson again missed them both. This opened the door for Kenny Smith, who hit a 3-pointer with 1.6 seconds remaining to send the game into overtime. The Rockets had the momentum, and they rode it to an overtime win as well as a 4-0 series sweep, as Anderson struggled to overcome the moment, averaging just 9 points on 28% shooting in the remaining 3 games. To start the 95-96 season, Shaquille O'Neal suffered a broken thumb which required surgery, and he would miss the opening 6 weeks of the season. The Magic hardly missed a beat though, starting the season 17-5, showing no hangover from their NBA Finals loss. Anderson started a little slow, shooting a career-low 36% from the field in the first 9 games, but in late November, he had consecutive games of 34, 25, and 31 points, and Nick was back. In early January, a sprained toe affected Anderson's play as he missed the game, but then he tried to play on. He struggled through a bad month, averaging only 11 points a game on 39% shooting, and then he sprained his ankle against Boston at the end of the month. The very next night, Anderson was questionable to play, but he unloaded 30 points on the Knicks. Anderson didn't like sitting out, and he often played banged up if he felt he could contribute to the team. The remainder of the regular season was largely uneventful for Anderson as he averaged 14 points a game while shooting efficiently after the All-Star break, and the Magic won a franchise record 60 games. In the first round of the playoffs, the Detroit Pistons were no match for the Magic, and Anderson averaged 16 points in the 3-game sweep. Anderson played well again against Atlanta in the second round, averaging 16 points a game again as the Magic took a 4-1 series win to set up a showdown with the 72-10 Chicago Bulls. The Bulls team was on a mission, keen for payback for last season's playoff loss, and after setting an NBA record for season wins, they were unstoppable. Anderson struggled in the series, averaging just 8 points on 31% shooting in the first 3 games before spraining his wrist late in Game 3 and missing the 4th game of the sweep, which ended the Magic season. Following the playoff loss, Shaquille O'Neal left in free agency to the Los Angeles Lakers, and this move had a major psychological impact on Anderson's career. Shaq stated one of his reasons for leaving was over frustrations with Anderson's refusal to accept his place as a role player and his reluctance to let he and Hardaway be the stars. The 4 missed free throws in the 1995 finals game still haunted Anderson, but the previous season, as the team had stayed together, he still shot a reasonable 69% from the line as he maintained hope they would get back to the finals and he would be able to right his wrong. Now with Shaq leaving and having harsh words for Anderson on the way out, Anderson began to struggle mentally, blaming himself and his missed free throws for the team not staying together, and during the 96-97 season, he would shoot a career-worst 40.4% from the free-throw line. Aside from the career-low percentage, Anderson also shied away from driving and drawing any contact, which might put him onto the free-throw line, and his free-throw attempts plummeted to less than half of the previous season as he became a one-dimensional perimeter shooter. With the Magic losing Shaq, and with early season injuries to Penny Hardaway and Dennis Scott, the Magic needed Anderson to step up and take on a larger role. Adding to Anderson's struggles, a woman he had had a short relationship with accused him of rape, threatening to go public with her accusations if Anderson didn't pay her $60,000 to cover psychological damages. Anderson was exonerated as police determined there was not enough evidence to file charges, and somehow, during all of this, he managed to average 16.8 points per game and lead the Magic to an 8-4 record in November. In a Dallas game in early December, Anderson suffered another wrist injury. The following game, with so many players injured, the Magic tied the NBA record for fewest points in a game, scoring just 57 in a blowout loss to Cleveland. Anderson missed 15 games, and the Magic won only 3 of them. By the time he returned to the lineup in January, the team was languishing with an 11-17 record. When Nick and Penny returned, the Magic reeled off 13 wins in the next 16 games, even though Anderson, still bothered by his wrist issue, averaged less than 10 points per game in January. Anderson found other ways to contribute. For the season, he averaged a career-high 1.9 steals per game and a career-low 1.4 turnovers. He was a steadying presence on the court and in the locker room. After the All-Star break, the Magic lost 5 straight games, leading to a players-only meeting, the outcome of which was coach Brian Hill was fired, replaced by assistant Richie Adubato. The coaching change brought with it a more free-flowing offense, and it suited the team as the Magic finished on a 21-12 run. However, Anderson only averaged 10 points per game in the new system, though he did have to deal with a knee injury in March. In the first round of the playoffs, the Magic faced regional rivals Miami, and Anderson injured his wrist yet again in Game 2 and he struggled mightily, averaging just 5.6 points per game for the series. Penny Hardaway put the team on his back and he forced the series into a deciding 5th game, but the Magic lost, ending their season. For the 1997-98 season, Chuck Daly was brought in to coach the team, and longtime teammate Dennis Scott was traded for veteran point guard Derek Harper. Mark Price was also added, and the plan was to move Penny back to shooting guard, and so Anderson began the year as the starting small forward. Anderson started the season poorly, averaging just 6 points per game in the first 5 games before sitting out with a jammed thumb. After returning, Hardaway missed time with his knee problems, and Anderson shifted back to the 2 guard. The team played well with Bo Outlaw as the starting small forward, but when Penny returned, Anderson was shifted to a bench role, as they wanted to keep Outlaw's energy in the starting lineup. And despite all the injuries, in early December the Magic were coasting with a 16-7 record. On December 8th against Philadelphia, Anderson broke his hand and he would miss the next 6 weeks of action. Penny, as well, was out with his knee issues and the Magic began to struggle. The Magic went 4-10 with Anderson, Hardaway and also Derek Strong out injured, and even when Anderson came back, the Magic lost the next 7 straight to fall below 500. It wasn't until Penny's return at the end of January that when the Magic broke their losing streak. By this point, Anderson was finally healthy, and after averaging just 6.3 points per game and shooting an incredibly bad 30% from the free-throw line in the season thus far, he asked to be moved back to the starting lineup. Unlike Anderson, Penny was not healthy, and after playing a further 6 games, he was shut down for the season with his knee injuries, handing the scoring responsibilities over to Anderson, who was struggling through his worst season as a pro. But Anderson stepped up to the plate. After the All-Star break, he averaged 23.9 points and 6.1 rebounds per game. He played over 37 minutes per game, and he even shot 68% from the free-throw line as he tried to keep the Magic in the playoff race. In February, Anderson was named the NBA's Player of the Week, leading the Magic to 4 straight wins over playoff contending teams while averaging 30 points per game and shooting over 85% from the free-throw line. Shortly after, Anderson missed 2 games with the flu, but he came back and averaged 26 points per game during an 8-game stretch in March, including a 38-point outburst against the Nets. In the very next game, however, Anderson strained his hamstring and he missed 5 of the next 6 games while it recovered. Anderson maintained his strong play in the stretch run, and in what was an injury-plagued season for the Magic, Anderson took a shot to the shoulder in the final game of the season and he sat out the second half. Anderson had helped the Magic to a 41-41 record, and though the Magic missed the playoffs, it looked like Anderson was back to his old self and the Magic had plenty to be optimistic about for the following season. After finishing the previous season on a tear, Anderson's momentum came to a grinding halt with the 1998 NBA Lockout. The lockout lasted until January 1999, reducing the regular season to just 50 games and forcing the cancellation of the All-Star Game. The Magic began their season on February 5th, and Anderson was the starting shooting guard with a healthy but less explosive Anthony Hardaway as his backcourt running mate. In the third game of the season, Anderson scored 26 points to become the first Magic player to pass 10,000 points for the franchise. The Magic started 10-4 in February, with Anderson scoring over 18 points per game and shooting over 40% from downtown. As the season went on, Anderson's minutes started to diminish as his shooting percentages dropped, and coach Chuck Daly loved what Darrell Armstrong brought to the table, and he increased his minutes in a 3-guard rotation. At the end of March, Anderson injured his hamstring again against the Wizards. He missed 3 games, and when he returned, he came off the bench, with Armstrong given an opportunity to start. The Magic won all 3 games that Anderson missed, and the first 3 games where he came off the bench, before 4 losses in the next 5 prompted his reinsertion into the starting lineup. The Magic continued their late-season slump, losing an additional 3 games before Daly tried starting all 3 guards and shifting Anderson to small forward. The move righted the ship, and the team entered the playoffs on a 4-game winning streak. Anderson's play during the stretch run was inconsistent, but with a few games remaining in the regular season, he became the first Magic player to record 1,000 steals. In the final home game of the regular season, the Magic had a celebration of 10 years of Magic basketball, where 10 former players returned for a special ceremony. Playing in front of his former teammates, Anderson wound back the clock, dropping 40 points, 9 rebounds, and 6 assists, as the Magic went into the playoffs with a 33-17 record as the number 3 seed in the Eastern Conference. The Magic were matched up against the Philadelphia 76ers and had struggled during the season to try to guard Allen Iverson. Iverson led the 76ers to a Game 1 victory, stealing home court advantage, as Anderson scored 18 points but shot just 6 of 22 from the field. In Game 2, Anderson scored only 13 points, but Penny Hardaway led the Magic to a win to level the series. In Games 3 and 4, Anderson scored 23 and 29 points respectively, but the Magic went down in 4 games. After the loss, Chuck Daly retired, prompting the front office to make wholesale changes during the offseason. Anderson, along with Penny Hardaway, Horace Grant, and starting center Isaac Austin, were all traded. Anderson was sent to the Sacramento Kings for Tariq Abdul-Wahad. Anderson had 1 solid season as a starter for the Kings, but shot below 50% from the free-throw line, and the following season was relegated to a bench role. Anderson was then traded to the Grizzlies and played sparingly for a season there before being traded to the Cavaliers. Anderson was waived before ever playing in Cleveland, and he retired. In Anderson's 692-game Magic career, he averaged 15.4 points, 5.3 rebounds, and 1.5 steals per game. He left the Magic as the franchise's all-time leader in games, points, and steals. I hope you've enjoyed this look at the Magic career of Nick Anderson. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. This concludes our look at the inaugural 89-90 Magic team. Check back soon as we delve into the 1990-91 Magic team, starting with Mark McNamara.